Have you ever looked up during a morning walk and noticed a crow staring at you? Not just glancing in your direction, but actually watching you. At first, it feels like nothing more than coincidence. After all, crows are everywhere. They're perched on rooftops, telephone poles, fences, and tree branches in cities, suburbs, and quiet country roads alike. It's easy to assume that if one happens to be looking your way, you're simply standing where it already planned to be. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the crow isn't just looking in your direction? What if it's looking at you? For centuries, crows have inspired stories filled with mystery. In different cultures, they've been seen as symbols of wisdom, messengers, tricksters, and silent observers. While many of those legends belong to folklore rather than science, they all seem to share one fascinating idea. People have long sensed that crows notice more than they let on. Today, researchers are discovering something remarkable. Not because crows possess supernatural powers, but because their intelligence may be far greater than most people ever imagined. The next time you notice a crow nearby, resist the urge to dismiss it as background scenery. Spend just a few seconds watching it. Does it seem unusually interested in what's happening around you? Does it stay where it is instead of flying away? Does it tilt its head as if trying to understand something? Most people never pause long enough to find out. And that's where the real story begins. Imagine leaving your house every morning at nearly the same time. You walk along the same sidewalk, you pass the same trees, you cross the same street. Maybe you stop at the same coffee shop or spend a few quiet minutes in the same neighborhood park before heading to work. To you, it's simply another ordinary morning. But to a crow watching from above, your routine may look very different. From its perch high in a tree, the bird has a wide view of everything happening below. It notices movement, it notices timing, it notices who appears, who disappears, and who behaves the same way day after day. Unlike us, crows don't rely only on first impressions. They pay close attention to patterns, and patterns tell them something incredibly valuable. They help answer one of the most important questions any wild animal must solve every single day. What in this environment can I predict? The natural world is filled with uncertainty. Food appears and disappears, predators move silently, weather changes without warning. Every decision matters. The ability to recognize reliable patterns can make the difference between safety and danger. That's one reason scientists believe crows have developed such impressive observational skills. Instead of reacting to every movement, they quietly gather information. They watch, they compare, they remember, and over time, those observations begin forming a surprisingly detailed picture of the world around them. Now think about your own daily routine. Without realizing it, you probably create hundreds of small habits. You park your car in nearly the same place. You walk your dog along familiar streets. You sit on the same park bench. You water your garden around the same hour. To another person, these habits might seem unimportant, but to a crow observing from above, they are valuable information. Not because the bird is interested in your personal life, but because consistency makes the world easier to understand. Every repeated action becomes another piece of a much larger puzzle. Slowly, almost invisibly, the crow begins learning what to expect. And that's where something fascinating starts to happen. Because the bird isn't simply watching people, it's learning the difference between individuals. For a long time, many scientists believed birds responded mainly to general threats. Someone walks too close, the bird flies away. Simple. But researchers studying crows began noticing something that challenged this idea. The birds didn't always react the same way to every person. Sometimes they seemed noticeably calmer around certain individuals. Other times they became cautious the moment a particular person appeared. At first glance, this might not seem extraordinary, yet when scientists looked more carefully, the pattern became difficult to ignore. The birds appeared to recognize individual humans, not just groups of people, not just familiar locations, specific individuals. That discovery completely changed the way many researchers thought about crow intelligence. Recognition requires memory. Memory requires learning. and learning requires paying attention over time. None of those things happen by accident. Of course, recognizing a face is only the beginning. Think about the people in your own life. You don't remember someone simply because you've seen them once. You remember them because of repeated experiences, conversations, habits, shared moments. The human brain naturally builds connections through repetition. Crows appear to do something surprisingly similar. Not in the same way we do, but in their own remarkable way. Every encounter becomes another observation, another small piece of information, another opportunity to understand whether someone is predictable, harmless, or worth avoiding. That's why a crow watching you today may not be making a decision based on this single moment. It may be quietly comparing today's encounter with many previous ones you've completely forgotten. And that's what makes the next part of this story even more surprising. Because remembering a person is only the beginning. What crows do with those memories is where their intelligence becomes truly extraordinary. So, how long can a crow remember someone? Longer than most people expect. Imagine walking through the same neighborhood every morning for months. You probably wouldn't notice the crows sitting quietly on the same oak tree or the one perched on a nearby rooftop. To you, they blend into the background. But from their perspective, you're becoming part of the landscape. You're no longer just another passerby. You're becoming familiar. Researchers studying crow behavior have found that these birds are capable of remembering individual human faces for years. That doesn't mean every crow remembers every person forever. Like many animals, they focus on experiences that matter, especially those connected to safety, danger, or repeated encounters. The more meaningful or consistent the experience, the more likely it is to be remembered. That's a remarkably useful ability for a wild animal. Think about the challenges a crow faces every single day. It must decide where to find food, which streets are safe to cross, which animals should be avoided, which places offer shelter, and perhaps most importantly, which humans can be trusted. Making the wrong decision can have serious consequences. So instead of treating every person the same, crows appear to gather evidence over time. Every encounter becomes another piece of information. A calmly walking jogger creates one pattern. A suddenly chasing birds away creates a very different one. The crow doesn't need words. It doesn't need intentions explained. It simply watches behavior, and behavior often tells a clearer story than appearances ever could. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that animals think only in the present moment. We often imagine a bird reacting instantly to whatever is happening right now. But many intelligent animals do something much more sophisticated. They compare the present with the past. A crow perched above a sidewalk isn't just seeing today's walk. It may also be recalling yesterday, and last week, and perhaps dozens of similar mornings before that. That's why repeated routines matter so much. Every time you follow the same path, every time you sit on the same bench, every time you quietly water your garden, you're adding another page to a story the crow has been reading all along. Not because it cares about your schedule, but because consistency helps it make sense of what will happen next. Predictability is one of the most valuable resources in nature. Wild animals constantly search for it. Predictable food sources, predictable shelter, predictable dangers, predictable neighbors. When something behaves the same way again and again, uncertainty begins to disappear, and uncertainty is often what keeps wild animals cautious. This helps explain something many people have experienced without fully understanding. At first, the crow flies away the moment you get close. The next week, it waits just a little longer. A few weeks later, it stays on the branch while you walk underneath. Eventually, the distance between you becomes smaller than it once was. Has the crow become tame? Not at all. It's still every bit as wild as before. What's changed isn't the crow's nature. It's the amount of information it has collected. After watching your routine over and over, the bird has reached a conclusion. You behave in ways it can predict. And in the animal world, predictable often means safer than unpredictable. That doesn't mean the crow suddenly trusts all humans. Far from it. Its judgment is personal, built slowly through repeated observation. That's an important distinction. The crow isn't making a decision about humanity. It's making a decision about you. Now, imagine looking at the world through the crow's eyes. From high above the neighborhood, every day is filled with choices. Should I land near that bird feeder? Should I wait until those people leave? Should I search the park instead? Should I stay here or move to another tree? Each decision carries some level of risk. The crow can't afford to guess. It survives by reducing uncertainty. That's why careful observation becomes such an advantage. A familiar jogger, a quiet gardener, a child who always tosses breadcrumbs, a dog that barks at every passing bird. Over time, each becomes part of the crow's mental map, not simply as individuals, but as reliable patterns. Scientists sometimes describe this as pattern recognition, but in everyday life, it almost looks magical. You feel as though the crow somehow knows you. In reality, it may simply know your habits, and habits reveal more than most people realize. Here's something worth thinking about. When you leave your house in the morning, you're probably planning your day. Maybe you're thinking about work. Maybe you're checking your phone. Maybe you're replaying yesterday's conversation in your head. Meanwhile, a crow sitting quietly nearby isn't distracted by any of those things. Its attention is focused entirely on the environment. Who is arriving? Who is leaving? Who behaves calmly? Who behaves unpredictably? Without realizing it, you may have walked past that same bird dozens of times, and during each of those encounters, it may have learned something new. Not because it was studying you in the way a human researcher